Yeah, this is the good, the bad, and the ugly of artificial intelligence and a Christian response. And I'll start by showing this picture of a dystopian world. Dystopia here means as bad as it can get. And there were two famous books written about dystopian world. 1984, did anybody read this or see the movie? About half. Where books are banned, information is suppressed, citizens are trapped in a state-controlled culture. And the other one, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Anybody? A lot of people have to read this in high school. And it's very different. It's where we become obsessed with technology, shallow entertainment, and information overload. And the interesting thing is that 1984, what we hate will oppress us. And Brave New World, the technology we fall in love will oppress us. And both of those are happening today. So here's the thing that you always think about with AI. Will AI come to dominate human thoughts, words, and actions? Some movies say exactly that. So about 40 years ago, there was 2001, A Space Odyssey. Maybe some of you have seen that. Then my son, The Terminator, I'll Be Back, right? Then with Will Smith, I, Robot, and you'll see some videos from that. And more recently, there was The Matrix and all of the things that happened afterwards. So for you guys to know how you're going to spend the next 90 minutes, this is my outline, and we'll start out by defining what artificial intelligence is. And there's three flavors. The first flavor is what's here today, artificial narrow intelligence, where current systems are designed for single specific tasks. They do one thing, and they try to enhance human capabilities in areas like commerce, communication, and medical diagnostics. But that's not the one you hear in the movies, right? What's the one you hear in the movies? That's artificial general intelligence, which is a speculative future where AI matches human cognitive abilities across all domains. You upload the person into the computer. And if you turbocharge that, you get flavor number 3, artificial superintelligence, where AI completely surpasses human intelligence, acting kind of like a god, okay? So let's go back and look at an example of artificial narrow intelligence. And this is maybe the most valuable one. If you go to the hospital and get an x-ray, you have a radiologist that looks at the x-ray and sees if there's a pathology. But in artificial narrow intelligence, it's different because the computer is stored with a database of 1 million x-rays, and it can very rapidly compare your x-ray with those 1 million x-rays, and it will generally give you a much better diagnosis that you can get at your local hospital. So what should we think about that? The machine that does that is not intelligent. It's not. The machine is just executing the programming. The database of all these x-rays is not intelligent either. The intelligence lies with the computer designers and the programmers and the radiologists that understand x-rays or CT scans, and they possess the medical expertise to interpret them. But the output that you get from that resembles what an intelligent doctor could have provided you if he or she could have looked at those 1 million x-rays. And so that's why it's artificial. That's why it's artificial. Now, there's this guy, Mark Anderson, who's a pioneer in web engine development, and he defines what AI is and what it isn't. So what it is, it'll be on the next slide. But what it is the application of mathematics and software code to teach computers how to understand, synthesize, and generate knowledge in ways similar to how people do it. AI is a computer program like any other. It runs, it takes input, it processes, and generates output. So now your first video, what AI is not. It's not killer software or robots that spring to life to destroy humanity as depicted in the movies. Now, if you want to read one book on AI, this is the one to get, 2084 by John Lennox, a guy I've talked to several times. He makes a comment that the AI programs don't think. It's one thing to make a machine that can simulate a human hand lifting an object, but it's a completely different thing to make a machine that can simulate the thoughts of a human when he or she is using a hand to lift an object. And there's a good example of this with cats. Cats, okay? So a computer may mimic behavior, but it does not think or feel. It's not conscious. An AI program may be able to recognize a cat in a YouTube video, but it does not know that it did or does not know what a cat is. Now, the leaders in AI think this whole thing about AGI that you see in the movie is pretty hard to achieve. Stuart Russell and Peter Norvig wrote the book Artificial Intelligence, which is the Bible of AI, and they say, we are interested in creating programs that behave intelligently. The additional project of making them conscious is not one that we are equipped to take on, nor one whose success we would be able to determine. Now, how does AI work? AI uses algorithms, and there's two examples of algorithms here. One's just a recipe that you use in the kitchen. You follow the steps. That's what AI does. But artificial intelligence is a little different because it uses computer programming that involves mathematics, logic, input, output, and memory. So here's an example of a neural network, right? And this neural network is aimed at taking photographs of animals in the sea and determining what they are. So the network starts out with training. And in this case, you train the network with shapes like stars and patterns of bubble-like objects, or you train them with shapes like ovals and stripes. And in this case, we did a very good job of training the neural network so it could recognize a starfish. And we did a pretty poor job of recognizing the nautilus, and it said, hey, it's a sea urchin. But that's what neural networks do. They use training to connect inputs to outputs. But an actual neural network is a lot more complicated than the one I just showed, where you have lots and lots of nodes. And there's even a more advanced example of this called machine learning. Machine learning is a newer field which enables systems to build analytical models without explicit programming. And a good example of this is with chess. So AlphaZero uses Google's DeepMind computer software, and it taught itself to play chess at a grandmaster level in just 4 hours. I mean, think about this. Chess has been around for 1,000 years. In 4 hours, it relies on self-play without program strategies or openings, and it beats everybody. It's amazing. So, what about these neural networks and machine learning? What do we have to worry about this? So this guy, Jeffrey Hinton from University of Toronto, who's supposed to be AI, does give us an interesting warning about artificial intelligence. He starts out by comparing artificial intelligence to the human brain. And a neural network has about 1 trillion connections, and all you have 100 times more, a lot more, right? But listen to what he says. As soon as it gets really complicated, we don't know what's going on anymore. Then we know what's going on in your brain. That's because the training in between the inputs and the outputs are constructed after the program is put together. We don't know what's going on anymore. The learning algorithm is designed, but the neural network is produced when it interacts with the data. So here's a little bit of a worry. The systems autonomously, on their own, write their own code. That's a worry. Now, some people are not worried. Some people are not worried. Here's a guy named Danny Crooks. He's a professor of computer engineering at Queens. He says this: we are still a long, long way from creating real human-like intelligence. People have been fooled by the impact of data-driven computing into thinking that we are approaching the level of human intelligence. But in my opinion, we're nowhere near it. Well, so you've got a mixed picture. Some people say yeah, some people say no. If it happens, and it's coming, and it is coming, we probably ought to be worried about the ethics and moral machines. And in John Lennox's book, 2084, he highlights a lot of the ethical problems. So what are they? See if these happen to you now. Erosion of privacy, social manipulation, targeted financial persuasion. Anybody get a pop-up on their phone today? Cybercrime, restrictions on free choice, proliferation of pornography. That's not very happy. And this is something that happens in technology. Don Lennox gives us this warning. The danger is that people get carried away. If it can be done, it should be done mentality without thinking carefully through any of the potential ethical problems. Now, the computer software that's embodied in AI is written by people. Everybody's got a worldview, even the programmers. So let's look at an example of worldview. In Russia, they have a voice assistant called Alex. It was put together by a company called Yandex. And in case anybody knows Russian, apparently that's Yandex in Russian. So this is what they asked this large language model. You ready for this? In Russia, there are enemies of the people? Answer. There are people and there are non-people. Question. Can they be shot? Answer. They must be. Question. That would be okay? No doubt about it. Okay, but they are people. Soon they will be non-people. Not too good, right? Maybe you don't want to, leave it to them. So there's been attempts toward putting ethics into computers before. And Isaac Asimov started this with his 3 laws of robotics. Some of you might have heard these already. So here's the first one. Law number 1, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Right? Law number, whoa, didn't expect that. Law number 2, a robot must obey orders given, I'm going to go back so I can make sure you read that. There you go. A robot must obey orders given to it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And number 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. So, does this embody everything a computer would have to do to make a decision on an ethical dilemma? Consider the switch tracks dilemma. Here's a train, it's coming down the road, down the tracks, it can't be stopped. You're at the switch. On one side, you got one person, on the other side, you got 5 people. But you have to make one choice. What do you choose and why? So maybe that's easy, right? You only kill one person instead of the other one. But what about this? What if you have on one side of the tracks, you've got 5 recent graduates of medical school about to enter the medical profession, and the other ones, you've got experienced doctors, but they're about ready to retire. Who do you pick then and why? So you've got the worldview of the programmers put in there, right? Here's an example of worldview Vitus. I don't know if you ever listened to the podcast by Sam Maruska. He's pretty good. He has the podcast, The Practical Wisdom, and he gave this example where he asked ChatGPT for 10 pros and 10 cons of visiting a small American town. And AI listed conservative values as one of the big negatives. So I was on I attend all the phone calls that Senator Dave McCormick has. And so I told this to Dave McCormick, and he says to me, we screwed up social media. We can't screw up AI. This is terrible, So anyway, I hope he gets that right. So guiding principles. Some people are trying to put guiding principles in place. And a lot of people are worried about what AI could turn into in 2017. This is led by Elon Musk. The Asilomorph AI principles were endorsed by 1,000 researchers with 10 ambitious goals: research integrity, safety, value alignment, human values, privacy, all the way down to the common good. But some people are not worried about this. This is a mathematician, Hannah Fry, and she works at Cambridge University, and she says, for the time being, worrying about evil AI is a bit like worrying about overcrowding on Mars. Okay, so again, a mixed picture, right? Some good, some bad. So here's 3 questions. Can AI systems be ethical? Can they be safe? Will they be defined by the worldview of the programmers? Probably, right? So to identify the worldviews of the programmers, you have to ask, one question, which is, what is the creation story? And there's two choices, right? One is the theistic worldview that probably most of us or all of us in the room have. The Christian theistic view holds that life began through the deliberate actions of a divine intelligence. That's God. That's our creator. But the opposite of that is the atheistic worldview that says that we are merely biological machines. Computers made of meat. So if computers used to be made of meat, keep going. Make them out of silicon. No problem, right? So they say that the first self-replicating cell emerged by chance from a primordial soup. You might have heard that in high school. And from there, Darwinian evolution produced all subsequent life, including humans. So if we keep extending this to the right, what's the next step? The next step is uploaded life into silicon. And wouldn't it be dangerous to redefine humanity in computers if we didn't have a consistent origin story in the first place? Probably. If we don't have that foundation, the AI successor could render humanity obsolete or worse, dehumanized. Because remember, they're using Darwinian evolution. And in Darwinian evolution, the children eat the parents. The parents disappear. Survival of the fittest. So that's bad. Now, the truth of science is different. Science is, to me, the best reason to believe in God. Science clearly shows that God created. There was a Big Bang. That requires a Big Banger. You cannot unhear that, right? The universe is fine-tuned, so it requires a cosmic fine-tuner. The Earth requires an architect. If anybody here thinks there's life on other planets, there's not. I could explain that later if you want to know. The origin of first life requires a chemist, an author, a computer programmer, and an engineer. So do all the plants and animals. And humans are really special and really different. Now, a lot of scientists today think that story's not right. But what about the people that started science? Is what I said anti-science? Is it? The pioneers of modern scientists and the best scientists alive today are devout Christians. Galileo, Isaac Newton, James Clerk Maxwell, Johannes Kepler, and on and on and on. All the people that originated science were Christians. James Tour, the most famous scientist in the world today, is a Christian. So you've got some scientists that are Christian and some are not. So what makes the difference? Is it the science? No, it's obviously not the science, it's their worldview. The difference between scientists that believe in God and scientists that believe in Darwinism is not their science, it's their worldview. Now, there's a really good example of this. Dan Brown wrote the book Origin. And he's got this primordial soup, and he gets life out of that. Now, what is he doing? He's reproducing the Miller-Urey experiment. There's Stanley Miller, who in 1953 was working in the laboratory at University of Chicago of Nobel laureate Harold Urey, and they came up with this bubbling soup, and poof, out comes life, which didn't work. It didn't work, all right? But in the novel, it does work, okay? So he reimagines the 1953 Miller-Urey experiment solving the origin of life. How does he do it? He adds artificial intelligence. You get this experiment that doesn't work, you add artificial intelligence, you write a page-turning thriller, you sell 10 million copies, all right? And those copies are there to persuade readers that science, embodied by artificial intelligence, that's the key, right, has mastered life beginnings. Baloney. The origin of life is pure science fiction. There is no evidence that suggests that either the natural world or computational systems can generate genuine life, and there's plenty of evidence that points to a designer. So that was the first question, where did we come from? The second question is, where are we going? So here's the graph, all right? Here's the graph. So on the y-axis, we've got the intellectual level and intellectual power. On the x-axis, you've got time, all right? So human intellect improves a little bit over time, Now, 1955, the first digital computer, all right? And computational power is improving very quickly. Moore's law, it doubles every doubles every couple years. And there's this red dot. The red dot is called the singularity, where the computational power that exists on the planet will exceed the total human intellect for everybody put together. That's called the singularity. And then you'll have transcendent AI, where it'll just accelerate after that. And then you've got the birth of godlike AI. Now, the person that likes this the most is named Ray Kurzweil. He's Google's director of engineering. He puts out all the Kurzweil software for voice recognition, if you've ever heard of that. And he said in 2040, that's 14 years, right? Between 2040 and 2075, artificial superintelligence will surpass human intelligence, replacing or merging with Homo sapiens through transhumanism, or enhancing humans via brain chips, or cyborgs, or whole brain emulation, and even conquering death if you can upload yourself onto silicon, and the only thing you need is electricity. You get to live forever, right? Now, these guys, Nick Bostrom and Vincent Mueller, they did this survey of a whole bunch of people working in AI, and they said, how likely is it that all this stuff that he said will really happen, right? And here's what he said. AI systems will reach overall human ability. 50% of the respondents said, yeah, between 2040 and 2050. By 2075, 90% of those respondents said, yes, that'll happen. From reaching human ability, it will move on to superintelligence in 2 years. 10% of people said that. In 30 years, 75% of the people said that. Now, how do you like this next one? You ready? You ready? The development turns out to be bad or extremely bad for humanity. 31% of the people said yes to that. So this doesn't look so happy. Now, others, again, it's a mixed picture, right? Others think artificial general intelligence is impossible. And I hope to show you later in the talk that artificial general intelligence is impossible. It will never happen because it can't happen. So these guys wrote this book, Why Machines Will Never Rule the World. They basically say AGI is mathematically impossible, akin to perpetual motion. Now let's get back to the business of the computer program writes itself. This is I.J. Good. He's one of the pioneers in ultra-intelligent machines. Here's what he said. Speculations concerning the first ultra-intelligent machine. Let an ultra-intelligent machine be defined as a machine that can far surpass all the intellectual activities of any man, however clever. Since the design of machines is one of the intellectual activities, an ultra-intelligent machine could design even better machines. There would then unquestionably be an intelligence explosion. And the intelligence of man would be left far behind. Thus, the first ultra-intelligent machine is the last invention that man need ever make. Now, this is encapsulated pretty cool in a CNBC headline in 2025. Here's what they said. Once AI reaches superintelligence, there's no kill switch to save us. Wow. And this is starting to happen already, right? We've got real-world fusion, VR glasses that you can wear, Neuralink implants where you can kind of think something and get one of your limbs to move, and smartphones that we carry around and sort of become part of our life. Now, this is the way life is right now, 2026. That's pretty different from the way life used to be, okay? You didn't have to worry about artificial intelligence back then, but now you do. And some people say, artificial intelligence is my answer. I can live forever. I can be God. Will you please freeze my brain? And so once you come up with Control-Alt-Delete and we can reboot, you're there forever, right? Or maybe you got cyborgs, right? We get a little help. We can be part biology and part computer. Or maybe you can just upload your brain, whole brain emulation. Now, Louis Rosenberg is the founder of a company called Unanimous AI, and he's a little worried about this. And he said, the prospect of a sentient artificial intelligence being created on Earth is no less dangerous than, get this, an alien intelligence showing up from another planet. After all, it will have its own values, its own morals, its own sensibilities, and most of all, its own interests. To assume that its interests will be aligned with ours is absurdly naive. So that gives us a bunch of unanswered questions. Will the technical singularity ever occur? When? Will humans merge with machines through cybernetic enhancement or fully upload their consciousness to digital substrates? Will AGI ever produce super intelligent artificial life? What ethical guidelines or governance frameworks will regulate it? And should we feel optimistic or fearful? All right. So let's look at the examples of AI. So this will be a part where you're already familiar with it. So here's one, email and writing tools. You type in TEH, the program figures out it ought to be TAE. That's AI, right? Does spelling correction. Or you're sitting there typed months, you get OCT written down and it figures out you ought to be October. And it'll suggest that. That's AI. How about this one? Language translation. La iglesia comunitaria efrata es las mejor y Kevin Eshelman no puede ser superado. And if you want to know what that means, it's up there at the top. So this is pandering to the audience, okay? Right? Alexa. Be bad if you had somebody in your house named Alexa, right? Okay. Siri and Alexa are digital assistants. Large language models, which compose text based upon patterns learned from billions of pages of internet content, which are being integrated into word pastors, raises serious questions about copyright, academic integrity, and whether students still learn to write essays themselves. Now, if you get my paper, which I guess there's a link to that Barry put in there, I wrote the whole paper myself, but I stuck it into Grok to make it sound better. And boy, Grok's a better writer than me. He made it more concise and easier to read. So there's an example. How about this one? You start talking with your phone, and pretty soon there's an ads that pops up in Facebook or Instagram or X or stuff like that. So online advertising. Here's one that I did at work, CAD/CAM, the integration of computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing. You draw a part on the computer, you got a machine that without touching it, poof, it produces everything. And that is how chips are built today. Artificial intelligence now optimizes the placement of the billions of transistors in a chip to maximize speed and efficiency. It could be doing a lot better. There's questions in there that we can talk about later. Medical diagnostics, here's the example that we showed before where you're looking at x-rays, CT scans, MRIs, and you've got smartwatches that perform EKGs, detect atrial fibrillation, which is nice. That's what I had. That detected when I had atrial fibrillation, so I'm happy about that. And alert emergency services. Here's this example that I showed you before about AlphaZero. Look at this. Look at this. This is amazing. DeepMind's AlphaZero mastered chess and Go, the more complicated game Go, through self-play, no human games required. Over 9 hours, it played 44 million games against itself. After 2 hours, it surpassed human players. After 4, it was beating the best chess engines in the world. You get humans, they dedicate their whole life into becoming chess masters. This program, in 4 hours, it beats everybody. I mean, how do you win, right? How do you win? Narrow AI in molecular biology. Here's a protein. You guys all would be interested in this, right? Every one of you has 40 trillion cells. Every one of those cells has 42 million proteins. That's a protein, and it folds up into the shape so it can do its job. And how this happens, how the DNA protein synthesis goes to the RNA and gets these to fold up like that, was solved by an AI program. So that's pretty cool. Social robots. Early social robots already provide companionship and basic emotional support for the elderly and patients, sometimes rivaling human caregivers by having a gentle voice and responsive behavior. How about this one? Autonomous vehicles. I'd rather drive myself, but autonomous vehicles are coming. Today's cars brake automatically, stay in lanes pretty well, and parallel park. Full self-driving cars are being tested in cities, so then you could read your email, just what you want to be doing instead of driving, right? Here's a good one. Platooning trucks follow inches apart to boost fuel economy for the truck in the front and the truck in the back by 15%. But In an unavoidable crash, whom should the autonomous car prioritize? We talked about that. Now, this is very similar, AI is very similar to other technologies in that it cuts both ways. Here's a sharp knife. A sharp knife can be used for surgery or killing somebody, right? A car can be used to take somebody to the hospital or to rob a bank. So you've got the good and the bad, and the title of this talk was The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So now we've got the bad, the bad. You heard about the good, now the bad, right? And so the first one is AI interviewing. You don't get to talk to a person anymore. AI resume screeners or a robot or a screen gives these sterile interviews, and they amplify bias in their training data. Excluding candidates, qualified or otherwise, before a human ever sees them. How about this one? This will be everybody's favorite, right? You ask for customer service. Please listen to each option as the menu has changed. Has anybody ever heard that before? Everybody, right? A quick call for a real person has been replaced by endless menus, looping options, abrupt hang-ups that waste hours, magnify frustrations, and solve nothing. Here's a really big one that I think the church ought to be involved with, which is mass job losses. The Future of Humanity Institute at MIT predicts that in 45 years, robots will outperform humans at about everything. So Stuart Russell says this: let's imagine that technology creates a twin of every person, and your twin shows up for your job. Whether it's your current job or one of those wonderful new jobs that will be created, your twin is a bit more cheerful, a bit less hungover, and willing to work for nothing. How many of you would still have a job? Now, this is a big problem because some people predict that there will be a loss of 100 million jobs in 40 years. Big problem. So what if you're a techie? Widespread technical unemployment. AI will take over. The government will have to fund basic universal income? Really? How about smartphones? Smartphones steal childhoods. We run our lives on amusement. We are allowed to be amused 100% of the time. Children are unaware that they are being ejected from genuine character-forming, play-based natural childhood to a smartphone, laptop, and technology-based pseudo-childhood that rewires their developing brains and ruins their social lives. Not good. The large language model. So you have large language models in the classroom, and people wonder if they ought to make classrooms out of Faraday cages and eliminate smartphones, because you can get the answer to any question, right? They kill critical thinking. If they don't have an answer, sometimes they hallucinate facts. They take away true creativity and reproduce their creators' biases. What about this one? What about pastors? Pastor wants to watch a PG-13 or R-rated movie on Saturday night. They get up to the computer at 11:59 p.m. By 12 midnight, poof, instant sermon. No preparation. No Holy Spirit either, right? Completely devoid. Here's a bad one, drone swarms. We have weapons of mass destruction like nuclear armament, but drone swarms are really bad for two reasons. One is you don't have to be a country to have enough money to buy one. Even a terrorist state can afford these things. The second is, if you've got 1,000 elements in here, or maybe 1,000,000, how do you kill it? How do you kill it? And if you remember last October in New Jersey, they had this, and we didn't know what it was all the time. So, okay, so that was the bad, right? So now it's going to get worse, okay? The ugly. The ugly. 3 billion of us carry these things around. They're called trackers. We call them smartphones. They know where you are. They listen to you, right? And then we connect with them on social platforms. And through these systems, we voluntarily provide enormous amounts of information to the cloud. Let's give a couple examples of this. This is happening today. In China, 1/6 of China is currently under the social credit system of the Chinese Communist Party. They have 400 million closed circuit TVs in China, every 500 feet. The Chinese Communist Party measures its citizens and corporations to determine trustworthiness. Each is assigned a unique identity number and starts with 300 social points. If you do what the government wants, pay your debts on time, using public transport, stay fit, all the way down to reporting large foreign courtesy holdings, you get extra points and perks. So now you can go into better restaurants and get a credit card with lower interest rate. But, what if you do what they don't want? What if you associate with unsafe people or all these other things, posting fake news? What if you share anti-government views that the Chinese government doesn't like, right? Then they deduct points, they trigger penalties, all of a sudden you can't go to the restaurant you want, or you can't get a credit card, or you can't get the job, or if you keep doing this, you get to go to this magical word, re-education camp. Maybe you don't come back from re-education camp, right? Now, this is happening, and 52 countries have protested this. This is in Xinjiang, China, which is in western China, where they have 11 million Uyghur people. The Chinese government seeks to erase the entire Uyghur culture, monitoring 11 million people with extreme AI surveillance. Millions have been imprisoned for re-education. Those that are not imprisoned face relentless surveillance, religious restrictions, forced labor, and sterilization. Uyghur women are coerced into marrying Han Chinese, and Han, quote, relatives, unquote, are placed in Uyghur homes as resident spies. Now, much of one of the chapters of John Lennox's book is dedicated to this. Here's what he says. Surveillance is intense. Every movement, conversation, action, and interaction, online and offline, is recorded. ID cards store DNA, reliability status, and behavioral indices. Cameras line streets and alleys. All smartphones must install government spyware, even for visitors. Does that make you want to go to China, by the way, right? Police stations every few hundred yards scan Uyghur phones. Imagine that. You're walking every few yards, they got to hand over your phone. And they upload the data to AI systems. Officers flag deviations like exiting through the back door of your house, or if you're using more electricity in your house than you usually use to see if you've got an unregistered guest. And more. Pretty bad, right? Here's what one of the Chinese religious affairs officials said. Break their lineage, break their roots, break their connections, break their origins. Completely shovel up the roots of two-faced people. Dig them out and fight them to the end. Right? That's Orwell's 1984 in action. In action. Bad, bad, bad. Here's one that I faced when I was working with Huawei on smartphones, and that is, where's all the AI hardware come from? And if you ever go to China and you go to like some of these cities, what do you see? You see wealth all over the place, way more than in the United States. China is full of wealth. And so what do you got? You got Trojan horses, right? You got all this hardware that comes from China. Is there a switch inside? You know, if they do that little switch, you know, something bad might happen to your phone or your car or your computer. That's where the hardware comes from. How about this one? Narrow AI chatbots. Adam Rain committed suicide. August 27th last year, parents of 16-year-old Adam Rain sued OpenAI, claiming that ChatGPT advised on his suicide. Now let's see if they're going to win this lawsuit. When Adam wrote to ChatGPT, I want to leave my noose in my room so someone finds it and tries to stop me, ChatGPT said, please don't leave the noose out. Let's make this space, ChatGPT, the first place where someone actually sees you. They might lose that lawsuit, right? And he killed himself. He killed himself. Here's another one, deep fakes. Remember when Taylor Swift had that last January? She had that deep fake show up. This is Vladimir Zelensky. They had a deep fake of him say, surrender to the Russians, right? You might get a call sounding exactly like my wife, acting for our bake pin. This is imitation game with a vengeance. Voice cloning is widespread and cheap. All you'd have to do is upload a video of yourself or an audio of yourself that's 20 seconds. How many people have uploaded a video or audio of themselves 20 seconds? How many people? Probably almost all of us, right? And then they could create a deep fake. And some of them aren't so good, but they're going to get really good. So everybody needs to have with their family a code word that only they know, so you can try to get the real identity of somebody if you're in this situation. Here's a pretty sad statistic. 99% of deep fake victims are women. 98% of deep fake videos are pornographic. Pretty bad, right? Pretty bad. So what about virtual reality and the metaverse? Now, Mark Zuckerberg owns Facebook. They renamed Facebook into what? Meta, right? $400 billion investment into trying to figure out how to make a virtual reality space. And here's an example of one.
The metaverse is difficult to define. It's usually described as online spaces where people socialize, work, and play as avatars, digital representations of their identities. Unlike a Zoom chat, the spaces don't disappear when you're done. They're there for someone else to use. Though it's often...
Now you're going to love this. So Meta has this program called Second Life. It's not that well developed anymore, but you can go into Second Life, you can get an avatar of yourself, and you can start to have a Second Life. And so here's what happened with this one guy. Okay, within Second Life, residents earn educations, build homes, trade real currency for Linden dollars. That's the money within Second Life. At a floating exchange rate with real money. They shop, decorate, date, marry, and form economies. They can have a social life that includes love, sex, and marriage. Especially desirable avatars command premium prices. That is a big surprise, okay? So here's an example, right? A 46-year-old man created a youthful avatar named Rolo, who fell in love with an avatar named Jade. They married in cyberspace. This is what the man told researchers. Second Life gives me a better relationship than I have in real life. This is where I feel most myself. Jade accepts who I am. My relationship with Jade makes it possible for me to stay in my marriage with my family. Imagine, good time to become a therapist, right? Because it's going to be a good business. So this is a little bit more controversial one. Barry told me he thought this was controversial, but I added this slide of why I kept this in, Barry. So this is for you. Why bring this up? Can we turn ourselves into gods by getting on computers? The Singularity predicts that. This defines the issue of artificial general intelligence. In a few minutes, I'm going to prove to you that that's impossible. But anyway, they're trying it. AGI development is fully resourced by the biggest corporations in the world. Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote the book Homo Deus, is pretty influential, right? He's the most influential author in the world today. 50 million copies in 65 languages. And this highlights the contrast with Christian theism that I want to make here. And so Harari says there's two goals humans need to have. Goal number one, transhumanism. What's that goal? Humans don't die because God decreed it or because mortality is an essential part of some great cosmic plan. Humans die due to some technical glitch. So let's fix the technical glitch so we don't have to die anymore. Death is merely a technical problem awaiting a technical solution. So here's what he says. He's a Darwinist, okay? So as a Darwinist, he says, organisms are algorithms. Every animal, including Homo sapiens, is assemblage of organic algorithms shaped by what? Natural selection over millions of years of evolution. So the substrate, carbon or silicon, doesn't matter, right? We're based on hydrocarbon chemistry. Fine. We can be based on silicon. We can be in a computer, in a silicon chip. No problem, right? Because if you stick an algorithm on our carbon, which is what we got now, our brains, we can stick an algorithm in silicon and we can live forever, right? Therefore, there's no reason non-organic AI systems cannot eventually replicate or surpass everything an organic system like a human can do. So when Harari's telling humans will merge with machines, re-engineer their bodies and minds, and ultimately become Homo Deus, God-like beings who have conquered suffering and death. Now, some people don't think this will happen, right? But some people do. Here's a guy that does. There's a biogerontologist. I never knew what a gerontologist was till I did this. His name is Aubrey de Grey, and he claims the first person to live to 1,000 may already be alive. And Chironics organizations freeze wealthy clients at death, only $200,000 per body, in the hope of a future resurrection when they can figure out to do Control-Alt-Delete. French neuroscientists, these two French neuroscientists say, forget it. It's not going to happen. Here's a question for the people in the room. If we could indefinitely postpone death, would we really want to preserve the frailty of a 90-year-old or a 150-year-old? And this is not what Jesus said, right? In Matthew 6, he said, which of you by being anxious can add a single hour to his span of life? So anyway, Harari, goal number one, right? We want to be gods. We want to be gods. Goal number two, we want everlasting pleasure, right? We will re-engineer Homo sapiens so that it can enjoy everlasting pleasure. Having raised humanity above the beastly level of survival struggles, we will now aim to upgrade humans into gods and turn Homo sapiens into Homo Deus. Now, some people say all these future people, they're the ones that count, not us. They're the ones that count. That's called long-termism. Future people are the ones that matter, the ones in silicon. Some ecological anti-humanists openly celebrate the prospect of the extinction of Homo sapiens. Humans should cease to exist because they've destroyed the planet. Anti-humanists would rather have a world without humans than a world without nature. And if the humans are gone, nature can return to its pre-human state. That's the only way to save the planet. So you got this funny graph here. Now, you got these dots up at the top. They're red. That represents all the people who have died. Then you got this one dot right here. That's all the people who are alive today, 7.95 billion people. Then you got a lot of dots, a whole bunch of dots, and those are all the people that will ever live if the sun doesn't burn out for 5 billion more years and you have a stable population of the earth of 11 billion people. All right, long-termism. You got 78 million times as many people that are coming than that have existed already. So you got this guy, Nick Bostrom, who I think is nuts. He's at Oxford's Future of Humanity Institute. He says this: present-day human suffering is morally negligible compared to future human beings who might populate the galaxy. Even if there's a mere 1% chance of 10 to the 54th people existing in the future, then the expected value of reducing the existential risks by a mere 1/1,000,000th of 1/1,000,000th of 1 percentage point is worth 100 billion times more than 1 billion human lives today. So this is what you should say if you're a long-termist. Priority number 1, 2, 3, and 4 should be to reduce existential risk. We shouldn't let the human race go extinct. We mustn't fritter away our finite resources on feel-good projects of some optimal efficacy, such as alleviating global poverty, reducing animal suffering, since neither threatens our long-term potential. Our long-term potential is what really matters. So if you listen to him, you don't need HarvestNet International. ECC could save 20% of their budget. Just spend it on going to the movies, right? Because why help anybody around here today? It's the future people that matters. This is ridiculous. This is the opposite. This is the opposite of the Christian obligation to love your neighbor, which showed up in 3 interesting books. They're called Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Long-termism places the present generation under an obligation to do everything it can to ensure a post-human future for whatever beings we create, even if they only exist in an AI simulation. Now, there's this philosopher named Emil Torres, and he says this: this long-termism is the most dangerous secular belief in the world today. It's a vision that commands us to replace humanity with a superior race of radically enhanced post-humans that exist in computers. Man. All right. So, should technology re-engineer humans into gods? Does humanity actually need to be upgraded into something post-human? What are or should be the aims of the true transhumanism? Is it wise or even morally permissible to re-engineer human nature and produce a permanent happiness? And should the present generation mortgage its duties to the poor, the suffering, and the unborn among us to secure a speculative post-human future for trillions who do not yet exist? Okay, so now, if you've been bored, this is the good part, so you got to pay attention to this part, all right? AGI, all you guys go to the movies. The movies are great, right? We're going to become all computers. This is going to prove it doesn't work. It doesn't work, all right? So listen up. So this is James Lovelock. He came up with the Gaia hypothesis. If you don't know what that is, it's pretty cool. But he said, quite soon, before we've reached the end of the century, even I think what people call robots will have taken over. Bex Tegmark is the president of at MIT, the Future of Life Institute. He says, in creating AI, we're birthing a new form of life with unlimited potential for good or ill. So you got all these companies like Anthropic and OpenAI and Google and Meta, and they got their foot on the gas. They're trying to develop this AI. And you've got some pretty impressive stuff, right? Generative models like GPT-4 produce outputs that feel eerily humans. Meta, Google, DeepMind, OpenAI, Anthropic are pouring tens of billions of dollars into the effort. And a scary thing is that the first nation to reach AGI might have immense power, especially the power to prevent another nation from getting there. And no one other than Vladimir Putin said this: whoever becomes the leader in this sphere will become ruler of the world. Wonder what he's investing his money in. Now you got this singularity we showed you when machine intelligence surpasses human intelligence, and that's happens when the computing power surpasses that. So driven by artificial superintelligence, right, you've got transcendent AI, which becomes uncontrollable and irreversible. Remember, CNBC said there's no kill switch. So machines rapidly improve themselves, resulting in unpredictable advances. Now, this is no problem, right? We know, scientism anyway, they know Mother Nature got us from apes to humans, so no problem. We'll just go into a computer. It's going to be easy to do, right? And a lot of leading scientists think that, like Sean Carroll, who I can't stand Sean Carroll, but he's at Johns Hopkins. He says this: we are blobs of organized mud. The meaning we find in life is not transcendent. How about Francis Crick? Until he died, he was the co-discoverer of DNA with James Watson. And before he died, the world's most famous scientist, he said, your joys and your sorrows, your memories and ambitions, your sense of personal identity and free will are in fact no more than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules. Right? So is a human more than just material? Is there a non-material component of a human? So, by the way, the answer to that question is yes. All right. People's answers depend on their worldview. One worldview says matter and energy is all there is, right? Right? The other one is theism, God created. Now, this is John Lennox. He's a guy I've talked to a number of times. I think he's the best apologist in the world right now. And he gives you a soundbite of how you can be sure to defeat an atheist in the conversation by doing this. So listen up. Hope this plays good.
John Lennox has a pretty convincing and partially entertaining narrative that he gives in many of his podcasts and lectures. For example, if you want to look at Socrates in the City, Lennox in 2019, June 20th, gave a talk called The Question of Science and God. And he describes what happens this way. He talks to other scientists and asks the question, tell me what you do science with. And he always tells people in his lectures that he points up to his head to make it kind of obvious what he's asking. And, you know, they say, well, they're maybe going to say, I'm going to do it with my mind, but then they can't say mind because it's not politically correct to say mind. Everything has to be material. So the scientist will respond back to Lennox and say, I do it with my brain. So Lennox says, tell me about your brain. Give me a short story about the brain. And he gets the answer from the scientist, well, that's relatively easy. The brain is the end product of an unguided evolutionary process. And then he looks back at them and he says, and you trust it. Tell me honestly, he says to the other person, if you knew that the computer you use in your laboratory or any of the instruments that you use were the end product of this mindless, unguided process, would you trust them? And, as a question. And then he waits and forces an answer, he says. And then he claims he's asked dozens of world-class scientists this question and never, ever had the answer yes. They always say no. So then he says, look, I see you have a problem then. So this is a way Lennox uses an example. So, most people fear that scientism buries God. Actually, science defeats atheism. So there you go.
Right. Now, what's this show, right? Scientism, the worship of science, destroys rationality, and therefore it cannot be true. All right, so let's go back to the AGI, right? Is a human being more than just material? You see on TV shows, well, the brain scan lights up. Wow, we really know a lot. The brain lights up, right? But the brain states can never be about something. When the human thinks about something, they also think about what they're thinking about. They have a mental state that corresponds to their feelings about what they're thinking about, and a computer does no such thing. And there's a guy named John Searle that came up with the example of this called the Chinese room. And this will be on the test. Okay, this is the one you got to get right. So here's the Chinese room. So there's the room, right? You got a door on one side, you got this block, you got these file cabinets, and the file cabinets have instructions for converting Chinese symbols to English language commands. If you look in there, you can write down Chinese. If you look in those file cabinets, right? Now, there's a slot on the left door and the right door, and there's a guy inside that doesn't know any Chinese at all. All he knows is how to get in those file cabinets. So there's this Chinese guy, and he asks a question in Chinese. What's the answer? He sends his question in the slot to this guy that doesn't know any Chinese. What does he do? He looks in the file cabinet, right? The file cabinet says, take a squiggle swaggle sign. I don't want to insult anybody that knows Mandarin. Take a squiggle swaggle sign from drawer 1 and put it next to the squiggle swaggle sign from drawer 5, right? And he says to himself, I'm just using rules to manipulate squiggles and squaggles to produce Chinese language behavior. But the rule book is in English. I don't understand a thing of Chinese. So this lady, she's sitting at the output. He's got his answer. He sends it to her. What does she say? She says, whoever or whatever is in that room is a great Chinese speaker. But the room doesn't know what it did. That is exactly what a computer does. Exactly what a computer does. It just follows instructions. The computer can never, ever, ever be conscious. It won't be conscious because it can't be conscious. Now, here's a professor, Margaret Bodum. She's at the University of Sussex. She says the same thing. Computers don't have goals of their own. The fact that a computer is following any goals at all can always be explained with reference to the goals of some human agent, like the programmer, who better be ready to go to court when bad things happen, right? When DeepMind's AlphaGo beat the world champion USOTL in 2016, it felt no satisfaction, still less exultation. And when the reigning chess program Stockfish 8 was trounced by AlphaZero a year later, even though AlphaZero had been given no data or advice on how humans play, it wasn't beset by disappointment or humiliation. Now, there's a guy named Robert Marks who's a professor of electrical engineering at Texas A&M, and he wrote a pretty cool book called The Non-Computable You, and the subtitle is interesting. What you do that artificial intelligence never will. This is another indication that you can't get to artificial general intelligence. And here's the things that are in the book. Qualia, or Qualia, it's pronounced both ways, How can you put this in a computer? The sensations of pain, taste, or smell. Examples, tasting a lemon or describing the color red. Think about this, right? You're with a person that's been blind since birth. Do you know what red is? Explain it to him. Can't be done, right? Can't be done. True comprehension of meaning behind rote memorization or pattern matching. Applying knowledge in novel ways which requires non-algorithmic judgment. Recognizing humor, subtleties, and meaning and symbolism. Disentangling ambiguities. Example, interpreting a sentence with multiple possible meanings based upon unspoken social cues. This will happen this Sunday. You watch the Super Bowl, right? Jackson Smith and Jigba, he plays for the Seahawks. He'll go get there and he'll get the one-handed catch, and the announcer will say, that was a ridiculous catch. A computer will not interpret that correctly. Everybody in this room knew what I said, but the computer can't know what it says. The computer can't do qualia. A computer cannot do truly original ideas. All it does is interpolate, right? So will artificial super intelligence take over like in Avengers or 2001 or Star Trek or The Matrix? And so this again is Max Tegmark. He wrote Life 3.0. He's the president of the Future of Life Institute at MIT. And he, in this book, Life 3.0, he described 12 possible scenarios for humanity's future. And half of them are good, but half of them aren't so good. And the one he spends the most time on is not very good, okay? So half of them are utopian with the characteristics of a benevolent God, and half are dystopian with the characteristics of the devil. And the one he spends the most time on is the Prometheus scenario. Remember that word. The Prometheus scenario, where human-level AGI is used to create a superintelligence that just is unleashed to take over the world. And here's how it happens. Prometheus, there's Prometheus, right? The path unfolds like this. First, AI displaces massive numbers of jobs. Imagine 100 million people out of work in the United States alone. Now, does anybody here know what MTurk is? MTurk is the preference engine that's in Amazon, right? And those in power will repurpose the Amazon preference engine, which is MTurk. Okay, so what does MTurk do? On the demand side, it figures out what you want to buy, but on the supply side, it creates jobs that people throughout the world can bid on to do. Now, if you've got 100 million people out of work, they got to try and find work. So MTurk offers micro-tasks that the unemployed population bids on and competes in exchange for wages, because it's got to get money somewhere, right? But to get on MTurk, Prometheus says, well, you're going to be under constant surveillance. With the excuse of fighting crime and terrorism and rescuing people suffering medical emergencies, everybody could be required to wear a security bracelet that combines the functionality of an Apple Watch with continuous uploading of position, health status, and conversations overheard, all right? Now the scary part, unauthorized attempts to remove or disable it will cause it to inject a lethal toxin into the forearm. So, do we have to worry about artificial general intelligence? No, but it doesn't matter, because the real danger is that some human replaces the G and uses artificial narrow intelligence, and we're still in big trouble. Because if you've got human nature, a bunch of evil people armed with powerful tools, they're already dangerous enough. You can see that in Xi China with the Uyghur people. China's AI-enabled surveillance state and social credit system demonstrate that totalitarian control does not require sentient machines, only powerful pattern recognition, ubiquitous sensors, and ruthless intent. And John Lennox says, surveillance of this intensity gives its controllers immense power. We do not have to wait for full AGI for that to happen. So this is like bad news, right? Because you're sitting saying, the movie's going to come true. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it comes true, because you already got all the bad stuff. And all that hardware is available in the United States today. It's not all put together, but in China it is put together, right? So this philosopher at the University of Texas, Bud Siewski, says this: you say you want man to be to himself what God has been to man. What you really mean is you want some men to be to other men what God has been to man. You want some men to be the absolute superiors of others. I assume you want to be in the former group and not the latter, because the former group holds all the cards. The worldview driving AI, materialist, post-human, and ultimately atheistic guarantees that whatever we build will reflect the image of fallen man, not the image of God. Now, what should we do? What should we do? The Christian response. So Harari, 50 million copies, right? He says the development of AI is widely predicted to transform or even end humanity as we know it. And most AI researchers and thought leaders like Harari are atheists, right? Harari regards monotheism as brainwashing and Jesus Christ as fake news. This reflects the dominant cultural narrative where science has supposedly consigned the Christian worldview to the dustbin of history. Now, I said before that that's baloney, and if given the time, I think I could convince everybody that science done correctly shows that God created. But we've got a little book about that. In Genesis 1:26, it says something really interesting, right? God gets together with the Holy Spirit and Jesus, and he says, let's do something different this time, right? We're going to do something different. Let's make this next thing in our own image. Let's make mankind in our own image. Pretty cool. What does that mean? We got humans on the left, computers on the right. Humans possess a soul and can enjoy a personal relationship with God. Computers possess no soul. Humans bear genuine moral responsibility and possess conscience. AI is unconscious. Humans are self-aware and contemplate death and eternity, right? Humans contemplate death. Computers don't contemplate anything. Humans are biologically alive. No machine can replicate biological life. Humans have intentional aboutness in their thought. Machines process symbols. Humans experience beauty and aesthetics. Computers compute and store data. Humans are genuinely curious and creative. AI systems remix and interpolate data. Humans have a gift from God. God linked consciousness with intelligence. Computers store millions of facts but have no consciousness. Humans were created for meaningful work. AI-driven mass unemployment threatens human dignity. Human language is rooted in relationships. Technology isolates. Humans' addictions to smartphones erodes relationships. God designed marriage and family between men and women. AI robot companions can never fulfill that design. Couples have children. Only image bearers can truly be fruitful and multiply. AI systems give birth to other AI systems, but they will always be artifacts. And human rights are inalienable because they come in the imago Dei, not granted by governments or algorithms. AI systems may be granted rights by governments, which is already happening, but only as a reflection of wokeness extremism. So being created in the image of God is crucial. And Lennox talks about this in defining what is a human being by giving us this warning. If we get the answer to what is a human being wrong, we shall get everything else wrong in the age of artificial intelligence. But if we recover the majestic biblical vision of men and women made in the image of God, we have the only secure foundation for human dignity, freedom, and hope in the age of super intelligent machines. So what is the origin of morality in humans and artificial intelligence? In Genesis, God gave us morality as a gift, but also a command. He gave us moral aptitude and knowledge, but in order to make choices, God also gave us moral boundaries. Of course, we screwed it up, right? Adam and Eve were free to eat from any tree except for the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And the surface temptation will be you will be like God. Now, doesn't this sound like Yuval Noah Harari? We'll put you into silicon, you will be like God, right? It doesn't sound the same. And the humans chose self-deification. But it all went downhill after that, so that's bad, right? So transhumans explicitly employ genetic engineering, neural enhancement, and mind uploading for human self-deification, which is just what Genesis says is catastrophic. If humans succeed in creating or becoming AI gods, who will define, right and wrong, the programmers. Now, this guy, philosopher Jay Budziuski, again from the University of Texas, he says this: Genesis, I think, is the crux of it. To abolish and remake human nature is to play God. If he created human nature, if he intended it, then we have no business exchanging it for another. But that's not what the atheists say, right? Most leading AI developers are secular, explicitly naturalistic, like the most famous atheist in the world, Richard Dawkins, who wrote The God Delusion. And he says the universe has no purpose, no evil, and no good. So any moral framework you want is fine. Just use moral relativism. No problem, right? But here's this is a German philosopher, Jürgen Habermas. This is an atheist, right? This is an atheist. Listen to what he says. True moral convictions come from God. They're built in. They're a starting point. I don't have to teach you that murder is wrong. You come with that. I don't have to teach you that rape is wrong. You come with that. As a 2-year-old, when you're playing with your sibling and they take your toy, I didn't have to teach you to say no fair. You came with it, right? So here's what he said. Universal egalitarianism from which spring the ideals of freedom, the individual morality of conscience, human rights and democracy is the direct legacy of the Judaic ethic of justice and the Christian ethic of love. This is an atheist talking, right? To this day, there is no alternative to it. Everything else is just idle, postmodern talk. Great. If there's no alternative to it, we ought to stick it in a computer. But how are you going to do that? How are you going to put that in a computer, right? How can you put that into silicon? Morals and ethics are real things, but they're abstract things. They don't exist in material. They exist in a human conscience, in a mind. Now, this lady, Paula Boddington, she's a researcher at Cardiff University. She says, we could be in trouble. God lost rulership of his creation, and we might too. The Genesis account of the fall of man gets the problem exactly right for exactly the right reasons. It's a worry about autonomy itself. What might robots do if we can't control them fully? Will they adhere to the same value systems of us? Will they disobey us? What will our relationships to our creations be? We can thank the Hebrew account of Genesis for pre-warning us thousands and thousands of years ago. So this whole business of superintelligence, they did another one of these surveys, and 327 AI researchers, 36% of them said it was plausible that decisions made by AI or machine learning systems could cause a catastrophe this century that is at least as bad as all-out nuclear war. Not great. So we need to have some Christians that get a vote in there too. And most of the AI researchers aren't Christians, but one of them is, and she's a leader. Her name is Rosalind Picard. She's at MIT. And here's her Christian criteria for values installed in AI systems. 1, acknowledge the equal worth of every individual regardless of age, gender, and nationality. 2, values should be independent of abilities or functions, for example, not age dependent. 3, values should not be limited by materialism, naturalism, and scientism. 4, human values are not something that should be granted or removed by any person or government in power over you. And 5, showing that she has some savvy, even being at MIT, human values should be bigger than some professor's idea. Pretty good. Okay. So Christians believe in a common objective standard that is outside ourselves. That standard came from God. But as you can see, humans have never been able to agree on that. And so then how do you teach fairness of a computer? It's not universal when it becomes on silicon. The computer cannot experience shame, awe, or love. They have no transcendent reference point, no relationship with the living God who is the only source of objective good or evil. Unless AI developers acknowledge that true morality is received rather than invented, the ethics they code into machines will remain a pale, dangerous imitation of the real thing. I typed into Grok, can you give me true ethics? Can you give me true religion? They said, no, I can give you facts and everything, but you need to go to church. So at least Good start. All right, the true Homo Deus, right? Harari says we're going to turn into gods. What's the truth? In February 21st, 2011, Time magazine said 2045 will be the year that man becomes immoral by turning themselves into computers. And here's a parody of the Sistine Chapel where God has created Adam, except now Adam's, a cyborg, right? Transhumanists envision we will each become gods born not from the spirit, but from silicon. Artificial superintelligence that represents the crowning achievement of billions of years of evolution is now consciously directed by human programmers or whoever makes these robots. The digital Homo Deus will solve disease and death and human limitation. And a 2022 survey of 738 AI experts said 50% of them said that this will happen by 2059. So we're going to turn themselves into gods. So Lennox gets in debates with people. We're going to turn you into gods. What does he say? You're too late. Too late. How can I be too late? I haven't even got there yet. He says, you're too late. True transhumanism was perfected 2,000 years ago in Roman-occupied Judea. Think about that, right? Jesus constitutes the original ultimate upgrade of humanity. That's not an upgrade onto silicon chips. In Christ, God himself became man, the true Homo Deus. Good deal, right? Good deal. You get to become like him. He defeated sin and death and opened the way for resurrected, glorified bodies that far surpass anything silicon can offer. So if you get in a debate with your friends and they say, we're going to turn into computers, you're too late, man. You win, right? Now, this is cool, right? Because we have evidence for this, right? We got eyewitness testimony. We got 4 books that talk all about this, right? It's rooted in eyewitness testimony, fulfilled prophecy, and historical evidence that it has withstood 2 millennia of scrutiny. So transhumanists say, let's upload minds onto machines. Many doubt that you can do this because you can't upload qualia. Transhumanism offers technical enhancements while ignoring the big problem, which is sin, right? Christianity promises not a ghostly digital existence, but a bodily resurrection. And only a gospel addresses this. So, future shock or true hope? What's the choice, right? Now, people fear death. Why? Number one thing you might fear death is there's nothing on the other side, right? The other is we're going to get it, right? So people fear death. So transhumanism comes along and solves both problems, right? We're going to abolish death and judgment, right? We're going to do everlasting pleasure. But Christianity offers a different answer. Jesus did not merely overcome death. He overcame sin, which is the root cause of death. The AI vision promises to upload minds while leaving bodies and the problem of sin behind. But Christ's bodily resurrection guarantees that everyone who trusts him will be transformed and get an imperishable body at his return. That's the true transhumanism. So look at the contrast. Right on the left, it's going to be AI. On the right will be Christ, right? On the left. When AI solves death, there is no body. There's just disembodied data. Identity becomes negotiable, morality optional, and tyranny inevitable. When Christ returned, believers receive body like his resurrection body. Pretty good deal. Identity is preserved. You still get to be you. Sin is removed. And the relationship to God is restored. So the true Homo Deus is Christ. Now, people have tried to do this fake Homo Deus in the past, right? In history, right? There's Nero, Emperor Nero, Hitler, Stalin, Mao, responsible for 150 million deaths in the 1900s, who tried to seize godlike power through deception and control. Narrow AI combined with total surveillance makes global domination feasible, something attempted by all those people. And each time, the quest for divinity produced not superhuman glory, but subhuman horror. Now, the Bible talks about this. It's in 2 Thessalonians. It's also in Revelation. We'll cover that in a minute. But in 2 Thessalonians, Paul speaks very clearly. And pastors say everything's getting better, but maybe it's going to take a while. So I got 10 minutes. Okay. It says this, "For that day will not come until the rebellion comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship. The man of sin opposes God because he could use AI. Paul insists Christ will not return until this figure is revealed. So we should not be surprised to see this guy take over for 42 months. But the story doesn't end that way because Jesus comes by and gets him. So the time of the end. I'm going to go past this and just get to the recommendation because I only got 10 minutes. Okay, recommendations. So I'll make sure I end on time. So I've got recommendations that John Lennox put in his book 2084 and I've added to. What are they? Number one, be grateful for the genuine good that AI can achieve. AI is a mixed picture. A lot of good and a lot of bad. AI has the real potential to help solve hunger, combat climate change, cure diseases, discover new energy sources, answer queries, and maybe even embed God-honoring moral constraints into future AI systems. That'd be wonderful. Number two, become educated. Church leaders, and I'm glad this happens here, so I'm really commenting on people other than Barry. Church leaders should identify and platform members who actually understand AI and can speak with authority on a subject about which most clergy and most congregations don't know very little. All you guys are spending all this time trying to learn about it, so you guys get 100 points, right? All right. So the church must equip the next generation for the world that is already arriving. Get careers in AI. Urgently encourage young Christians to pursue careers in science, technology, and AI. Somebody's got to stick the ethics in these computer programs. It might as well be us, right? Teach about end-time threats. Jim Ehrman gave a sermon about this a couple months ago. Pastors and Christian leaders must start teaching confidently about the second coming, the man of lawlessness, and Revelation. Most churches don't even give those sermons, right? Avoiding these texts leaves the church unprepared and silent on issues Scripture speaks about directly. Educate about worldview. Everybody should know about worldview. Worldview issues profoundly shape the motivations driving AI development and the assumptions embedded in AI systems. Reject long-termism's charity trade-off, where you're just going to save everything for the future people that don't exist and you're not going to take care of people today. We are commanded to love our neighbor. Charity remains non-negotiable mandate. Number 7, transhumanism. It ain't going to work. Merging with silicon is impossible. All that can do is upload facts. You can't upload you. It's nothing but a materialist attempt to become God. Human consciousness cannot be computed and true AGI is unattainable. Jesus' resurrection is the best deal. Stay vigilant against techno-totalitarianism. The real end times threat is not artificial general intelligence, but artificial narrow intelligence wielded by authoritarian states, by election manipulation, thought control, censorship, and one world government. Now here's an interesting, you think you don't want to put this one in a church lecture, but remember what happened after 9/11? Everybody went to church, right? The Department of Defense must urgently prioritize directed energy weapons, advanced electromotive pulse systems, and electronic warfare capabilities and other layered countermeasures to neutralize this threat, which could be from a terrorist state or we might not be here. Right now, you can't stop it. What if you have 1 million drones? How are you going to shoot 1 million drones? 10, refuse to withdraw from society. Oh my gosh, the sky is falling. I'm going to stay in my bed. No. Evil will be present in governments, corporations, and human hearts until Christ returns, but Christians need to get out there on the stage. Kevin always says, get political office, right? Live fruitful, engaged lives, and bear witness to the gospel. Number 11, Prepare for AI-driven job displacement. We should be from the pulpit saying, be involved in lifelong learning. It's not going to be like it was the last 40 years. AI and robotics will accelerate reshaping work and daily life. For better or for worse, churches must champion lifelong learning through colleges, online courses, or community programs to keep congregants employable. Right, be lifelong learners. I've sort of said that. 13, combat smartphone addiction. I don't know how to solve this problem. Smartphones are echo boxes. They create echo chambers and fuel addiction because everybody wants amusement 100% of the time, but they track every tap. Instagram and Facebook serve what you seek, keeping you hooked. Churches should promote no screen Wednesdays, outdoor play like baseball and tag, indoor reading and exercises. Life's foundation should be worship, meaningful work and study, health relationships, physical activity, and godly intimacy, not screens. I hope we can win that one. Treat machines as people and people. So you better have a good relationship with your kids, and you better watch out for deep fakes. He becomes her, right? You do internet dating. You got a girl you want to date. Is it really a girl? Pretty bad. Privacy reform. All the time. Do you agree with my terms and conditions? Anybody ever read those? Do you know anybody that does? Right? Everyday Christians should urge elected officials to overhaul privacy laws. Almost all users blindly accept vendor terms from software devices, Amazon, and others, but you don't have any alternative anyway. We need a new approach. Here's one that's meaningful to Barry Whistler and myself. Advocate a complete overhaul of the separation of church and state, right? This was initially established in the 1700s to protect churches from government interference. And now it is currently inverted to exactly the opposite so that churches can't affect the government. That's ridiculous. The church should be the biggest voice. And we ought to start by repealing the 1954 Johnson Amendment. If you don't know what that is, you should read about it. Number 17, educate on immediate AI risks. Churches must repeatedly run programs warning of trackers in smartphones, deep fakes, immersive dangers like Second Life avatars tied to pornography or fantasy, right? 18, large language models. Use them as basic tools, never as spiritual guides. That one's pretty obvious. 19, forbid using large language models to create sermons. You can make a sermon in 10 seconds, but it doesn't have any spiritual authority. You can't rush that. You have to live in the gospel, right? Churches grow because the Word of God and prayer are at center. Time spent with God and Scriptures cannot be faked. Number 20, use the correct large language model. So Anthropic is a company founded by former OpenAI employees, released Claude 2, a large language model designed to compete with ChatGPT. Claude 2 employs a dual engine system. The first generates the primary output, while the second, trained on ethical principles, reviews and edits the results to ensure alignment with safety and values. If you want to ask about this, I had a 3-hour argument with Grok 2 days ago. It's interesting how that worked. And number 21, strengthen your lampstand. As we become more submersed in the sea of AI, the only organization that can effectively combat is the most powerful organization in the world, which is the local church. So postscript, the quest for superintelligent homogeneity will never return to us Eden nor produce a benevolent God. It will only produce history's greatest rejection of the true God. There is no glorious future that ignores the problem of human sin, and only one person, the sinless one, has dealt with that problem decisively, Jesus Christ at the cross. So that's the good, the bad, and the ugly of artificial intelligence and a Christian response. So I hope that was on time. So